Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Chaffee on this Saturday as we take a look at some issues that are going on along the East Coast with regards to what's happening with a stalled weather front, which is lying, pretty much just to our south. And there's little ripples, little waves of low pressure that are sort of moving along it. And the reason why the front is stalled, there's a big ocean storm that's sitting way out in the Atlantic by about 1,200 miles or so east-southeast of Cape Cod. This is the system that wound up absorbing Tropical Storm Arlene, and it's not moving. It's just been sitting there for days and days, and it's going to continue to sit there for a little while longer at least. You can see it just rotating around, and as a result, everything kind of comes to a grinding halt. So what's happened today is that with the front stalled, we're getting some moisture that is moving up with these little ripples of low pressure, and as a result, there's been some shower activity, as you can see on the radar. Nothing especially heavy. Radar probably overdoes it a little bit in terms of how much of this is actually reaching the ground or not, but there are streaks of showers from southern New England all the way back down into northern Virginia, and then beyond that into West Virginia and parts of eastern Kentucky and into Tennessee. There's actually some flood watches up for this particular area here because of the rain that's been rather persistent. Now, we've got a few things going on that includes the fact that we're going to see low pressure moving up the East Coast Monday into Tuesday, and you can see it here, but I'm going to back up first because we have the latest GFS model that is just it's running now, and it's about 3/4 of the way through. So we've got this stalled weather front here in the east, and you can see the high is kind of nosing its way across the Great Lakes and into southeastern Canada and up into New England. That the waves, the main wave that's way out offshore, that goes out. So what's going to happen is we're going to see some drying occur, but there's still energy down here. You can see it right there, and the drying will mean that Sunday probably won't be a half bad day across the Northeast down to maybe northern areas of the mid-Atlantic states, though clouds are a concern, how far north the cloud line is, particularly because the wind is going to be onshore at least through tomorrow morning. Then it kind of breaks, that onshore flow breaks up a little bit tomorrow afternoon. So I'm thinking Sunday's going to turn out okay. But notice, low pressure winds up heading toward the southeast coast of the United States, and now we're going to start to see that lift up northward with rain, and that rain gets here, starts to move up into the mid-Atlantic states, certainly starts advancing northward late Sunday afternoon and reaches New Jersey, southern New Jersey Monday morning, and reaches New York City probably Monday afternoon, and on up to Boston sometime Monday night. But that low is right there, sitting right along the North Carolina coast. You've got a rather strong pressure gradient that's developing between the low here and high pressure that's up north east of Maine. So it's a pretty strong onshore easterly flow that sets up, and that is going to bring a pretty good soaking rain in, it seems. Looks like it wants to make it rain here all day on Tuesday, Monday night, all day Tuesday into Tuesday night, and then the rain moves out at least on Wednesday, but that low takes a little longer takes longer to lift up, so clearing is going to be an issue with that. Now, in the meantime, out across the Midwest, the next weather systems are getting shunted northwestward, moving into the western Great Lakes, and you see the model has a nice little low in central Wisconsin and actually produces some snow and sleet across much of the upper Midwest along about Tuesday, late Tuesday into Wednesday. We're talking about a small area up in northern Wisconsin, easternmost Minnesota, and maybe even into the upper peninsula of Michigan. So sort of a last winter gasp here. And, that front weakens somewhat as it moves toward the East Coast, but we're going to be setting up for warmer air that's going to try to build up northward. The question with that is whether there's going to be enough of an onshore flow that might want to push southward down into New Jersey and into the northern mid-Atlantic states. You can see another low is getting ready to come out of Texas and actually produces a pretty good stripe of severe weather, if you want to believe it, next weekend from northeast Oklahoma into north central Indiana and eventually into Ohio. So that's going to be something to watch to see if that's real. But this ridge in the east is going to be trying to build at the same time. So we're going to be battling here between warm air that's going to want to try to come up into southern New England and point south. I think the points south are in a better position, but how far north that warm air gets is going to depend on how much of an onshore flow are we going to wind up with. You know, eventually this winds up bringing a storm up into the lake, so it does offer severe weather threats next weekend and into next week across the Gulf states and on up into the Ohio Valley eventually, and maybe even into the middle and southern Atlantic coast early next week. So it's a pretty busy weather pattern overall. Now we'll go to the west, take a look at what's going on there. So we've got some weather up into the Pacific Northwest, and in fact, before we do that, let me just look at the satellite loop in the west, and you know we have another storm off the Pacific Northwest coast, and this trail of moisture that comes into northern California and swipes northward. You can see the troughing that's out here in the west, off the west coast, at least for the time being. And you know that's really what is dominating the weather pattern in the western part of the United States. So in the west, looks like there might be some action coming into the Rockies over time. We have some scattered action on Sunday night into Monday, and then another low comes crashing into the northwest during Monday, with the rains and snow spreading up into the Rockies. Now, as this low, you know, this energy eventually winds up translating its way eastward, we can see some rain from Iowa and Nebraska going all the way back into Colorado, Wyoming, northern Colorado anyway, and on up into Idaho, and yet more energy coming in. Looks like there will be some rain chances for the central and snow chances in the central and northern Rockies over the coming week or two. And in fact, as we move through the middle part of next week, this nice little low down in New Mexico generates some rain and snows from just about the whole state of Colorado all the way up through the northern Rockies. So and that chances for precipitation continue toward the end of the week and into the weekend. Looks pretty active here for you folks out there that have been dealing with drought conditions in many locations. At least the pattern seems to be somewhat favorable. So let's take a look. I'm going out now, by the way, to day 11 and 12. So there's still more action going on. So this is looking okay for you guys as far as activity is concerned. Let's look at the upper air pattern so we can kind of figure out what's happening. And I can already see now there at day 11 that we've got some big blocking high out in the Atlantic. Now, one of the things I noticed yesterday was that the blocking signature was going to be there through the first part of next week and then disappear through next weekend and then reappear later next week. So that's something to pay attention to. But here's what's happening. First off, in the east, you've got this vigorous upper air trough, that southern part of that jet stream. Here's your action, of course, in the west. You've got a jet that's coming down out of Canada, and you've got a ridge that's building up over Greenland. So there appears to be some room for this to move up for the East Coast. You can see how it lifts northward. It also weakens over time because what happens is the ridge starts to want to build, and that starts to weaken out the upper low. At the same time, you've got this deep trough that develops out in the western part of the United States. So it would be at this point now, the middle of next week, that the blocking signature starts to break down as you get that trough in the west. And here's that ridge that wants to pop up in the east. But again, it's a little problematic because of the fact that you have a little bit of a Canadian jet there. You've got the trough down in the west that wants to pop that ridge up, but it's going to be fighting against this little upper air low that forms over Hudson's Bay, assuming that's correct. Eventually, the ridge does win out. You see how it just kind of really just pops up. Once that system in Canada pulls away to the northeast, that ridge will win. So I think the argument would be, again, going back to whether there'll be an onshore flow or not. But certainly there will be very warm conditions for the eastern part of the United States with this trough in the west. Eventually, that ridge is going to decay, and now we have, a pretty strong flow early next week out of Canada, and a little bit of a split flow there in the west. So the weather system is going to be trying to undercut that to some degree. Over time, now only going out to day 11, we have what looks like a big blocking high that's developing up near Greenland. So we're going to have to watch that. And you've got a vortex in Canada that's going to want to shoot down some cooler air masses, and that continuous, unrelenting Pacific jet. I saw some videos yesterday from a fire out in California in a neighborhood. They had a wide helicopter shot. I was astounded by how green the grass is. I mean, just the rainfall has been so incredibly beneficial in reversing the drought out in the western part of the United States. I'm just going to go back one model run so we can maybe take it a little further into the long range and see what it has. So here's your blocking signature. Now, runs are going to change, somewhat in terms of their appearance, but it does have that blocking signature here in the east for the latter part of the period. So now we're going into the first week of May, and it does look like a cooler, wetter look in the eastern part of the U.S. as we begin the month of May, looking at this upper air pattern, because you have, a bit of a blocking signature up to the north, so that's going to displace the jet further south and allow for troughs to swing on through and at least maintain their intensity when they do that. So it's a pretty interesting pattern. I don't think there'll be any more tropical storms to deal with in the next couple of weeks. So we'll be getting closer and closer to hurricane season. At least, I'm ignoring that, by the way. At least from the standpoint of this storm appearing, it is a reminder that we have hurricane season starting in the Pacific on May 15th, and we have hurricane season, of course, starting in the Atlantic on June 1st. That doesn't mean we can't have off-season tropical developments, as we just saw, but usually when that happens, you have the one system, and then it just goes back to some semblance of normalcy until we get to the seasonal time frame where it's more favorable for these tropical systems to form. So everybody enjoy your weekend, and check out web posts. Will be on meteorologistjoechaffee.com. Angry Ben has the latest on New York City weather at nycweathernow.com. And thank you so much for being here on my YouTube channel. If you're new, welcome, and do hit the red subscribe button on the channel page and become a member. It's absolutely free, and you'll get notified every time new videos are posted. Have a great rest of your Saturday and rest of your weekend. We'll have a new video up tomorrow.